And all right, welcome to Food for the Heart once again, everybody. It's Friday, and thank you for joining us. To those who are here with us on Zoom and those who are also watching on Facebook. Tonight, Jessica Acevedo will be presenting, and it's about abuse. And I'd just like to introduce her, and it's my privilege and honor. I'm just very, very grateful that I have crossed paths with Jessica. I would say that, first of all, she's really petite, like really tiny, but I would say she has a really big heart, and her smile is never too small to give warmth and sunshine. And I think she's one of the very empathetic people that I know on the face of the earth. And we're so happy that she's with us here. How are you, Jessica?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Awesome. And thanks for your time tonight. I know you usually lead in the breakout rooms, but we are so happy that you're presenting tonight. So if you could just give us a brief summary or just a short 2-sentence description of what you're going to be talking about tonight.
So tonight I will be presenting on Dr. Jennifer Swartzer's book, 13 Weeks to Love, specifically chapter 11 on abuse stops here. So we will be looking or going through what the definition is, what kinds of abuse is out there, how it affects our brain, and then we'll go over techniques that I hope will be beneficial to those or all of us who have encountered some form of abuse in our lives.
Wow, sounds really, really important and practical and helpful. So I hope everyone will be blessed. So feel free to set up your slide there, Jess, whenever you're ready. And yes, if you need our assistance, just let me know.
Good evening, everyone. So as I stated just now, I will be presenting tonight on chapter 11, Abuse Stops Here. So first, I feel like we need to define exactly what is abuse. And as you can see there, it's the improper use of something, it's cruel or violent treatment of a person or animal. So next, I would like to go over the types of abuse. So we have here, as you all can see, neglect, and neglect can be failure to nurture, to love, to hold, converse with, encourage, affirm, guide, discipline, teach, instruct. There's physical abuse, which looks like hitting, punching, using weapons, threatening harm. There's verbal abuse, using words to hurt, mocking, yelling, making fun of. You know, I had presented last month at my church on bullying and how prevalent it is in our society. And something that I had stated in that presentation is that, you know, when the differences between when we laugh at someone and when we laugh with someone. So if we're in a group setting and we're laughing at a person, that's a form of abuse because that person is not amused by what you're telling them. On the contrary, when we laugh with the person, when that person feels included, feels okay with what's being said and is able to laugh with us, that's okay. But when we laugh at the person, that's not okay. So the way we use our words, we have to be really careful with that. We have to really think carefully before things come out of our mouth, because we either can use words to build someone or we can use words to destroy someone. And sometimes those words that destroy have lasting rippling effects in us. There's emotional abuse. So we give silent treatment, we gaslight. Gaslighting looks like, you know, if someone's telling you something, or if you have a situation where a person is saying how they were hurt, and then that other person who's listening, maybe they were the involved party and they're like, that's not that big, or you're just making that up, or words to belittle them. Those are forms of gaslighting, or saying things like, yeah, but when you use that word right there, you're automatically shutting the person down. It's almost like if you're casting blame on them, and that's why they reacted to that situation like that. There's sexual abuse, fondling, groping, rape, molestation, pornography. There's economic abuse, so withholding funds, over controlling of finances. And then there's religious abuse, using threats of God's displeasure, acting as if you're holier than thou, when in reality, you're hiding something in your heart. Trying to convey like an exacting picture of God, when we all know that God is love and he would never put us in a situation of abuse. When we all think of the home, our community, our church, we look at it like on the right side there is beautiful. We think of that's our place, that's our safe place. God created the home to be a school wherein we learn to love and be loved. However, when there's a reversal of that plan, it's as if, it's like nothing can damage the soul deeper than that safe place, than this reversal of the divine plan. That's our sanctuary of love. So that's why I kind of like put like a tear there, because we should be looking at those places as our safe place. But when abuse infiltrates our homes, when it infiltrates our churches, it's no longer a place of safety. When there is abuse, often abuse in a system is perpetuated by someone more valuable to that system than to the victim. So for example, when there's cases of abuse going on and that person wants or needs to speak out, oftentimes they're either not believed, things are swept under the rug. Statistics say that 25% of verbal abuse or its prevalence to child abuse, whether it be verbally, it's 25%, whether it be physical, it's 15%, and whether it be sexual, it's 12%. So there are systems in place to help victims of abuse. One of those is Project Safe Church. This is a ministry that has been set up to prevent and respond to abuse in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. So I encourage any of you who have experienced abuse, especially within the church, that this is set in place, and there is safe environments for you to speak out. So what happens, in our brains when all of this is occurring? First of all, I want to say that, abuse leads to trauma. So it causes trauma. Trauma affects our ability to do two main things, and that's to self-regulate and to bond. So trauma is an affliction of the powerless. The victim is rendered helpless by an overwhelming force. Traumatic events overwhelm the ordinary systems of care that give people a sense of control, of connection, of meaning. Traumatic events are extraordinary, not because they occur rarely, but rather because they overwhelm the ordinary human adaptation to life. When there's trauma going on, like I stated before, it eventually affects our brain. Let me just go back here, I'm sorry. Okay, I think I took out the slide on the brain, but I'll just go over it quickly. So we have the emotional part of our brain, which is known as the limbic system, and is made up of various structures, which I want to go over quickly so that you understand exactly what's going on in there. So as I said, the limbic system is the one which is most consistently linked with emotion. We have the amygdala, which is involved with fearful and anxious emotions. We have the hippocampus, more generally associated with memories and emotion. Then we have the cingulate cortex, involved in various aspects of emotion and memory. The septal nuclei, thought to be especially important to pleasure, reward, and reinforcement. Then we have the hypothalamus that controls hormone release via the anterior pituitary gland. It can affect widespread influence over bodily states to maintain homeostasis. So it maintains balance in our brain. There's a lot of things going on inside that we cannot see. Therefore, when there are things impacting, as stated here, trauma, when we're abused and as a result of that, we're traumatized, these traumatic events just cause an imbalance in chemicals, imbalance in the brain. When there's abuse, it compromises that trust building machinery of the brain. It becomes chronically aroused. We're constantly in a heightened state of fight or flight. We're ready to take something or someone on. We're not at peace. We're not in that calm state. Versus the flip side, where there isn't abuse or trauma going on, we're able to form that trusting, that calming, that healing bomb relationship. The emotion, that part of the brain, the limbic system, the emotional brain, calms in the presence of another person. So when we see someone we trust. For example, as children, if we see our mom or if we see our dad or whoever we grew up with, and that's a healthy relationship, that's when we see them, we're calmed by that. It becomes a calming effect. We're able to trust, and bonding involves a careful interplay of skills that develop in the contents of that healthy relationship. So when we start off as children, and I was seeing a couple clips of Dr. Caroline Leaf, and she was talking about children, especially those who were extremely depressed. She was stating that all children go through a phase of depression or anxiety. It's normal, but when there's extreme depression, she was saying it's like childhood sets that tone. What's going on? She said 1 in 12 children between the ages of 9 to 16 struggle with extreme depression. Again, when there's something going on in the home that disrupts that homeostasis, disrupts that balance in the home, it becomes very aroused and defensive, the brain. And abuse victims then think things in a distorted way. And this starts very young. And unfortunately for kids, especially, that part of the brain, that language part, that reasoning part has not developed yet. So what's getting bombarded and attacked there is the emotional system of the brain. So, it activates the fear response, and this is also known as a persistent fear state. They're like in a survival mode. And this survival mode helps them to stay alive, but it compromises that relationship building ability, that bond there. And as they get older, later on, it affects bonding in other relationships, whether it be with friends, colleagues, significant others. So it's just like a vicious cycle going on here. Because as I stated, children don't have that language yet. They can't express to us exactly what's going on. So when there's stressful things going on in the home, they aren't able to communicate that to us. Or if they see and hear things going on, maybe mom and dad arguing or some other type of form of abuse, they start thinking in their head, this is my fault, I can't trust anyone, or it's because of me that this is going on. They start to self-blame. And when you have a situation where it's a healthy home and they see, let's see, the child is not going through anything like that, and they see mom and dad yelling, which happens, it happens in all homes. They just think mom and dad are yelling, they lost their temper, everything is okay. But when it's a situation of abuse, that child, like I stated, remember, always heightened, always, in a constant survival mode, is going to think, I did something wrong. This is why mom and dad are going through issues. Another study that I had read as well, which was very interesting, it was talking about how us as parents or caregivers, when we are going through a situation, what is recommended is that we express that to the child so that they don't think, because if we just hold that in, or if we constantly say it's okay, or if they're going through something difficult and we tell them it's okay, it's all right, they're going to take that in through adulthood and just brush off problems and say it's okay. But when we're open, when we're vulnerable with them and say, hey, mom is having a tough day, I'm not saying that you have to be completely open and say verbatim specific details what's going on, but if you say things like, I had a rough day at work, this is why I feel like this, or this is why you see me frustrated, or this is why I'm sad today, they're able to take that and, believe it or not, bond with you, because they're able to see, like, hold up, my mom or my dad or my grandma, whoever cares for the child, they go through issues too, but this is how they're going about solving their issues. And on the flip side, when we see that, as I stated, there's a bonding effect there. The moms or the dads or the caregivers, I love you, becomes the child's I love you later on in life. I'm going through this issue. You see me like this. I may have said an unkind word to you, or you may have seen me act in an unusual way, but I just want to let you know this is what's going on with me and I love you. That carries on to them and helps them build bonding, healthy relationships. So, when we look at those secure bonds that we just laterally spoke about, this is obviously the best preventative. Secure bonds are the best abuse prevention measure, and God facilitates bonds in many, many ways. But when bonding is not there, when it's absent, the enemy of God can turn that home into that was once a sanctuary into a hellhole. So abuse perpetuated by family members, by mom, by dad, by the caregiver, packs a much more damaging punch than what's called generic abuse, as horrific as that can be. Abuse in the family indicates that protective bond now becomes a destructive chain. All that stuff is broken down, and it's like a chain reaction, as Dr. Lee has stated, childhood sets the tone, and all that stuff starts to work in the child's brain, messes with their emotional center, the limbic system, and just keeps on the chain reaction or domino effect. It starts to affect how that child now bonds and interacts with the family, and then later on the future relationships. This not only happens in childhood, I just stated this because, there's a prevalence of that, abuse with children, unfortunately, but, we as adults can go through abusive situations. But on the contrary, compared to children, we have that language center so already developed, and we're able to express what's going on with us. Unfortunately, sometimes if we don't have things in place to help us go through that trauma, we can experience what's called post-traumatic stress disorder or syndrome. So this is basically a form of trauma that displays the victim of abuse. It's a profound reaction to that trauma, nightmares, flashbacks, extreme triggers. It locks in that trauma, our brains become overloaded and overwhelmed as we were once children with that heightened sense of awareness that just continues into adulthood if we don't get the proper therapy to help us through this trauma, and then our ability to process memories normally can develop glitches. So it's just going over and over and over in our minds. There's ruminations going on. But I want to get into what we can do to help ourselves if we haven't gotten appropriate treatment, as children, if we had experienced abuse as children, or as adults, if we haven't gotten the appropriate help that we need. I just want to bring hope to you and to myself that there is better ways to cope and better techniques to help us get through any form of trauma that we've been through. 1 John 4:18-19 states, "There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear involves torment. But he who fears has not been made perfect in love. We love him because he first loved us." Love transforms the brain. 2 Corinthians 4:17 says, "For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all." So many times when people have gone through, children or people have gone through very impactful or extensive trauma, there's a thing that a lot of people, and when I studied this, I was actually pretty shocked, called post-traumatic growth. So post-traumatic growth happens after someone has experienced a trauma. This was first developed by psychologists Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun in the mid-1990s, and it holds that people who have endured psychological struggle following adversity can often see positive growth afterwards. It is a positive mental shift. Tedeschi found that across a wide range of negative consequence experiences, as many as 90% of survivors report at least one benefit of PTG, post-traumatic growth. 3 ways that their psychological functioning increases after a challenge, and these are ways our minds can grow after adversity. And the benefits here are appreciation of life. So when we've gone through something so traumatic, of course, we need to go through that healing process. But then many who have experienced this say that they have an appreciation for life. They look at life in a different way now. They look at relationships with others in a different way. They see new opportunities for growth, personal strength. They find, a spiritual awakening. So I'm not saying here that trauma is not destructive or challenging. It totally is. And this doesn't imply that victims should bounce back after adversity. Rather, post-traumatic growth, or PTG, evidence shows us that over time, and notice how I say over time, this is not something that happens overnight. It takes time. People can reap benefits from their challenges. And it holds a very important idea too. And I love this. When I read this, I was like, this has to be like, I need to write this somewhere and read it every day, because it says we don't bounce back from challenges, we bounce forward. So I'm going to say that again. We don't bounce back from challenges, we bounce forward. We want to go forward after we've gone through something very difficult. Yes, there's going to be setbacks, but the important thing to keep in mind is that we just keep it shuffling forward, keep it moving forward. And predictors that people who have gone through trauma will or may experience PTG is, spirituality, if they're involved in some kind of church, their social support, their acceptance of their coping, if they're able to open up and be empathically heard and understood. The opportunity for emotional disclosure, and not only an opportunity for that, but being able to share and know that their sharing is going to be kept confidential. Other things that can help us recover after we've gone through a struggle or through trauma. And this is one, especially for me, that is extremely hard, to be quite honest. And it's learning how to trust. And I think, and I know she's out there, when I've gone through my issues, she has, this person has always told me, Jess, I'm not saying that what you're going through is not difficult, but in order to help yourself out, try to seek someone. So like in my area where I work in a hospital with high-risk population, pregnant moms going through high-risk pregnancies. I see all kinds of, besides the pregnancy being high risk, the social issues involved with that too. And she's always told me, just find someone, one of your patients that you can connect with and help, because in our pain, we can help someone else who's going through pain. So it's not as to forget what we're going through, but to help us with what we're going through as well. So in building those little relationships, being able to help those who are as vulnerable as us or even more vulnerable, the elderly, going to nursing homes, singing, doing crafts with them, pet therapy, things like that will enable us to start trusting in God, because we know that He Himself suffered unspeakably in order to save us. Isaiah 53:5 says that He was pierced for our transgressions, He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on Him, and by His wounds we are healed. Just as we have wounds, He had and has wounds too. He still has those wounds, as a reminder. So once we're able to establish trust again in God, then slowly we'll have our little niche, our village of people to go to when we're going through setbacks or issues, and that will help us to learn to trust again. I put this picture in there because I love the beach. I love listening to the sounds of the ocean. I love feeling the wind on my face. That to me is calming and healing, despite all the issues going on either in my life or in your life. Find something that will help you feel that calm in the midst of the storm. So Psalm 113:2 says, "Surely I have calmed and quieted my soul, like a weaned child with his mother. Like a weaned child is my soul within me." Beautiful. Learn to think well. So when we dwell on negative information or the negative things that we've gone through, and trust me, I know, because I dwell a lot on the negative, and I know for a fact that it takes me right back to that bad or painful memory. And that doesn't do anything but just continue that cycle. When I was talking about PTSD, it's just that rumination. It just takes you back, and it's circling, and not doing anything for you, but just making you sadder, angrier, resentful. Is not helping you grow. It's leaving you stuck in that negative emotion. However, when we feed into the positive, that's held in the attention for 12 seconds in order for that to be remembered. So thought change, a change in our thoughts will require careful, steady effort. But in the long run, those efforts will pay off. So what I'm trying to say is this is going to take work. Unfortunately, sometimes trauma is something that a lot of times happens impactfully and quickly, and then we're left with this lifelong wound. And we have to work at reversing those negative thoughts and replacing them with positive thoughts. Which brings us into this lovely thing called neuroplasticity. So let's see if it plays.
Is there a sound, Jess? We can't hear the sound.
She's going to have to back out of her
Yeah, you
share.
might have to stop sharing, and then when you share the screen, look for a box, check box. It's an option to share the sound as well. Jess, are you able to stop sharing and then restart the video?
I don't think she can hear you.
Oh no, but it looks so interesting. I want to hear it.
I think she's listening to it, enjoying it.
All right.
Just text her.
Good call, Marie.
What
Yeah,
happened?
thanks.
You guys couldn't hear it?
No, you're gonna have to stop the screen share, and then when you share the screen again, look for a checkbox. It's an option to share the sound before you press OK.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can stop sharing the screen sharing. Yeah.
Okay. And then where do I go?
So when you hit share screen, before you click OK, look for, it's like a checkbox.
Oh, share sound. Yep.
Uh-huh.
I got it now.
Yeah, it looks really interesting. We want to hear it.
I thought you guys were like, oh, wow, that's cool. And so I heard, I don't think she hears. And I'm like, uh-oh.
Yeah, thanks, Marie.
Okay,
All right,
hold on
let's
one
see.
second. It's asking me for my password here, I guess, to share the sound.
No worries.
Try it again. Give me a thumbs up, somebody.
Not so long ago, many scientists believed that the brain did not change after childhood, that it was hardwired and fixed by the time we became adults. But recent advances in only the last decade now tell us that this is simply not true. The brain can and does change throughout our lives. It is adaptable, like plastic. Hence, neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity. How does neuroplasticity work? If you think of your brain as a dynamic, connected power grid, there are billions of pathways or roads lighting up every time you think, feel, or do something. Some of these roads are well-travelled. These are our habits, our established ways of thinking, feeling, and doing. Every time we think in a certain way, practice a particular task, or feel a specific emotion, we strengthen this road. It becomes easier for our brains to travel this pathway. Say we think about something differently, learn a new task, or choose a different emotion. We start carving out a new road. If we keep travelling that road, our brains begin to use this pathway more, and this new way of thinking, feeling, or doing becomes second nature. The old pathway gets used less and weakens. This process of rewiring your brain by forming new connections and weakening old ones is neuroplasticity in action. The good news is that we all have the ability to learn and change by rewiring our brains. If you have ever changed a bad habit or thought about something differently, you have carved a new pathway in your brain and experienced neuroplasticity firsthand. With repeated and directed attention towards your desired change, you can rewire your brain.
Okay, so after I saw that video, I am the type of learner that I need examples. I need to do it myself. So at first I was like, huh? Like I get it, but I don't get it. So I kept looking up things, Lord, I really want to understand this. So it wasn't until I saw another video that broke it down in a different way. And I was like, wow, I get this. So I want to share with you, in case you're that type of learner like me, the examples that they gave. Let's say you're back at school, you are learning the capitals of the 50 states. Like normally, most kids don't know that off the top of their head. You gotta practice it. You gotta study it. You know, the day of the exam is coming, and now you're there. You know, they're asking you the questions, and now it's just, I mean, you're just writing it out, boom, 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 boom. Another example, riding a bike. Most of us, if not all of us, know how to ride a bike off the bat. We start off with training wheels. Then the training wheels come off and we're wobbly, and then one day we just take off. That's neuroplasticity. That's forming those new pathways of learning new things, learning that, you know, when someone asks you as a child after you studied, what's the capital of Florida? Tallahassee. It just comes right on out. When you get on that bike, you just start pedaling away. So when I thought of this, I was like, all right, so if this is true of things like that, this has to be true. And just like the video said it, of rewiring our brain to, instead of focusing on that trauma that we've gone through that's been so painful to us, now practicing new ways. So it's a constant thing. You know, when we were studying for the exam, it was over and over and over again. When we were practicing to ride that bike, we practiced day and night, day and night. Same thing with helping ourselves to heal from a past or a current trauma. We constantly have to be working at feeding the brain the good. And that's part of self-care for us, knowing that God is just. Biblical affirmations. And one of the biblical affirmations that I love, one of my favorite people in the Bible that I just love to death is Mary Magdalene. And in Mark 14:6, where Jesus says, you know, she was anointing him. And of course, Judas had an issue with that. And Jesus says, leave her alone. Why are you bothering her? He sticks up for her. He sticks for those who are vulnerable. And for me, I feel affirmed by that, because that shows me that he cares. He cares for when, you know, when someone to us or to me, I can constantly tell myself, he's telling that person, leave her alone. We tend to carry legacy, you know, this legacy of abuse. So, you know, I encourage you to treat yourself as Jesus would treat you. Health, you know, good health for yourself, whether it be eating healthy, drinking lots of water, exercising, hygiene, going to counseling. You need to nourish to flourish. I love that picture there, because the plants don't grow unless you feed them. Same thing, we need to feed ourselves in order to grow. You know, we can't pour from an empty cup. You know, we should have a little intervention toolbox, our go-to, whether it be a board of affirmations, whether it be whatever it is that you like, relaxation techniques, Jesus meditation, going to therapy, forgiveness. And I like to pause here a little bit, because that first one says listening. There was a study conducted. Again, this was with teens. The group was 13 to 16-year-olds, and they were asked, what is one thing that you need? What do you want? What is one thing that you need? Across the board, they said to be listened to. And they had different groups of those that expressed situations that they were going through to a caregiver, to someone that they trusted. Most oftentimes it was their parents. And in that group, the parent was there and was listening, but not really listening. So there was like no eye contact. The parent was doing something else, but like, yeah, I'm listening to you. But when that group was compared with the other group, where they again expressed what they were going through, but that person, that parent, was giving them eye contact, responding back to what they were saying, asking questions, showing empathy to them, maybe touching them. That group showed more beneficial outcomes compared to the group where the parent or the caregiver was listening. So it's not just being there listening to a person, but actually paying attention to what's being said. That's going to help overcome a lot of our issues that we go through. And later on, I think it's coming up next, you guys are going to see how powerful listening is. And here it is. Dr. Megan McElheran, she's a clinical psychologist, obtained specialized training in the treatment of PTSD, said, the impact of relationships on healing has been researched extensively, right? It is not the application of any one specific technique that seems to make the difference. Rather, healing happens in the context of connection with another human being when qualities of safety, empathy, genuine understanding are present. In fact, therapy will not be successful if the therapeutic relationship is not present. Listening, basically, is just listening to one another in a way where we're engaged with that other person, which brings me to what is exactly when we're listening to another person, how can we show empathy? What is empathy?
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you can climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. Yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
So true. So true. Just connecting with one another. It doesn't have to take many words at all, and sometimes no words. just sitting there with the person. He found him in a desert land, and in the wasteland a howling wilderness. He encircled him, he instructed him, he kept him as the apple of his eye, as an eagle stirs up its nest, hovers over its young, spreading out its wings, taking them up, carrying them on its wings. So the Lord alone led him, and there was no foreign God with him. Deuteronomy 32:10-12. I love that. And the part where I love the best there from that scripture is that he takes us up. He's not taking us down. He's taking us up to a better state. We need to learn to love and be loved. Is anyone among you suffering? Let him pray. Is anyone cheerful? Let him sing psalms. Is anyone among you sick? Let him call for the elders of the church and let them pray over him, anointing him with the oil in the name of the Lord. And the prayer of faith will save the sick, and the Lord will raise him up. And if he has committed sin, he will be forgiven. James 5:13-15. Again, positive words there. Raise him up, not down, but up. And before I play this song for us to end, and I'd like you guys, when I put the song in there, I chose it with the lyrics so you can really pay attention to those lyrics, and hopefully it will help someone who's suffering tonight. But there's a story that Dr. Schwartzer spoke about or wrote about in this chapter. And this person went through severe abuse as a child. And unfortunately, as he got older, he got into destructive patterns and addiction. And I believe he was in jail or was about to be incarcerated. And it wasn't until he was referred for counseling, and he started to actively do things, just like when I spoke about neuroplasticity and doing things repetitively, positive things repetitively to help form those positive pathways in our brain. So he went to counseling, he joined a faith group, he was in a support group, he did readings, he did these things over and over and over again. And he responded by the decision to avail himself of the healing provided through the one who leaves all your diseases, who redeems your life from destruction, who crowns you with loving kindness and tender mercies. Psalm 103, 3 and 4. I hope you have others who carry it with you. I hope you are gentle with yourself when no one else has been. I hope you are a safe place for you. I am worthy.
Amen. Thank you. All right, let me just stop the live stream so we can have our breakout